Now, 3 years later, that limbo was ending. Ranger's find would provide answers, though probably not the ones anyone had hoped for. The remains would be identified, families would have closure, and the climbing community would have confirmation of what most had suspected, that the mountains had claimed 2 more victims in their ongoing toll of human ambition. The sound of approaching helicopters began to echo off the granite faces, growing louder as the response teams made their way toward the site. Riley stood, calling Ranger back from his vigil beside the boulder. The dog came reluctantly, looking back at his find with the satisfaction of a job well done. "Good boy," Riley murmured, scratching behind his ears. "You did good." As the first responders began their careful descent into the boulder field, Riley reflected on the morning's discovery. They'd set out to take a simple shortcut to work and instead had uncovered one of the park's most persistent mysteries. The granite had finally given up its secret, but Riley suspected that this discovery would raise as many questions as it answered. The morning mist had completely burned off now, revealing El Capitan in all its imposing majesty. The granite face seemed to watch impassively as humans swarmed over the debris field below, searching for answers that the mountain had kept hidden for 3 long years. Chapter 2. The notification 300 miles south in Fresno. Vera Wilder was hunched over her laptop at the kitchen table, reviewing invoices for her catering business. The morning light filtered through sheer curtains, casting soft shadows across the papers scattered before her. Her coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but she barely noticed, focused instead on reconciling the previous week's receipts with her bank statements. The business had grown substantially over the past 3 years, partly due to her determination to stay busy, to fill every waking moment with tasks that required her complete attention. Work was a refuge from the persistent uncertainty that had defined her life since Benjamin's disappearance. If she could focus on profit margins and vendor payments, she could temporarily forget about the empty chair at family dinners and the climbing gear that still hung in her garage. The doorbell's chime cut through the morning quiet, causing her to look up from the laptop screen. The grandfather clock in the hallway showed 9:17 a.m. Too early for deliveries, too late for postal service. She rarely had unexpected visitors, and the sound triggered an immediate spike of anxiety that she'd learned to associate with bad news. Through the peephole, she saw Sheriff Boyd Tanner standing on her front porch, his weathered face grave beneath his wide-brimmed hat. He was alone, which was unusual for official visits, and something in his posture, the way he held his shoulders, the careful positioning of his hands, suggested this wasn't a routine call. Vera's stomach dropped. She'd been expecting this visit for 3 years, had rehearsed conversations in her mind, but the reality of seeing Boyd on her doorstep still hit her like a physical blow. The sheriff didn't make house calls for good news, and his expression confirmed her worst fears. She opened the door, noting how he removed his hat immediately, how his fingers worried at the brim. They'd known each other since high school, had dated briefly senior year before she'd left for college at UC Davis. He'd been 2 years ahead of her, captain of the football team, destined for a career in law enforcement even then. "Morning, Vera," he said, his voice carrying the careful formality he used for official business. "May I come in?" She stepped aside, her mind already racing through possibilities. They'd found something. After 3 years of searching, of hoping, of gradually accepting that Benjamin might never be found, they'd finally uncovered evidence. The question was whether it would provide closure or just deeper pain. "It's about Benjamin, isn't it?" The words came out flat, resigned. She'd learned to read Boyd's expressions over the years, and this one was unmistakably serious. Boyd settled into her living room chair, looking uncomfortable in the domestic setting. His uniform seemed out of place among the throw pillows and family photos, a reminder of the official nature of his visit. He'd been to the house before, but always as a friend, never as a sheriff delivering news that would change everything. "We found remains this morning near El Capitan," he said, his voice gentle but direct. "A hiker's dog discovered them in a boulder field. The area's been unstable since the landslides, which is probably why the search teams missed it 3 years ago." Vera sank onto the couch, her legs suddenly unsteady. The news was simultaneously shocking and expected, devastating and somehow relieving. For 3 years, she'd lived with the uncertainty, the constant background hope that Benjamin might somehow still be alive, might have chosen to disappear, might someday walk through her door with that easy grin and a story about adventures in distant places. "Is it?" she began, then stopped. She wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. "We're not certain yet," Boyd said carefully, "but there was climbing gear with the body. The dental records will take a day or 2 to confirm, but—" He paused, choosing his words with obvious care. "The equipment matches what Miles Reeves was wearing when he disappeared." Miles, not Benjamin. Vera felt a confusing mix of relief and grief wash through her. Miles had been Benjamin's best friend since college, his constant climbing partner, the other half of their inseparable duo. They'd shared everything: adventures, risks, dreams of conquering the world's most challenging peaks. Finding one without the other seemed impossible. "Just Miles?" she asked, though she knew the answer would complicate rather than simplify her emotions. "So far, the area is still unstable from recent landslides, and we'll be conducting a thorough search of the entire region. But I wanted to tell you personally before word got out through official channels." Vera nodded, her mind spinning back to that morning 3 years ago. Benjamin had stopped by early, as he always did before major climbs, to drop off his spare car keys and give her his rough itinerary. He'd been excited about attempting a new route on El Capitan, something about a perfect weather window and optimal conditions. "We'll be back Sunday night," he'd promised, giving her that easy grin that made him look younger than his 24 years. "Miles wants to try that new Thai place downtown for dinner. You should join us." But Sunday had come and went without word. Then Monday, with growing anxiety. By Tuesday, she'd called the park rangers, officially reporting them overdue. The search had been massive helicopters, dog teams, experienced climbers rappelling down cliff faces, volunteers combing every trail and crevice for miles around. They'd found the abandoned campsite quickly enough. The tent was still pitched, sleeping bags neatly arranged, food stores untouched. Personal items remained exactly where they'd been. Left toothbrushes, books, Miles's journal with detailed route notes. It was as if the 2 young men had simply vanished into the granite, leaving behind only the detritus of interrupted lives. Vera Boyd's voice pulled her back to the present. "I'd like you to come with me to the site. The investigators might have questions, and you could help identify any personal items that might have been missed in the initial cataloging." She grabbed her keys and jacket, muscle memory taking over. Over the past 3 years, she'd made this transition countless times from normal life to crisis mode, from hope to despair and back again. The routine was familiar, though no less painful for its repetition. As they walked to Boyd's patrol car, he continued briefing her on the situation. The remains were found in an area that's been completely inaccessible since the winter slides. The entire boulder field shifted, creating new crevices and covering others. That's probably why the search teams missed it initially. The drive to Yosemite took nearly 2 hours, winding through the Central Valley and up into the foothills. Vera stared out the window, watching familiar landmarks pass by, the same route she'd driven countless times to drop Benjamin off for climbs or pick him up afterward, sunburned and exhausted but glowing with accomplishment. They'd grown up together in Fresno, raised by parents who'd encouraged their children's individual passions. Benjamin had discovered climbing in high school, starting with the artificial walls at the local gym before graduating to real rock faces. Vera had preferred activities that kept her feet on solid ground: photography, writing, eventually building her catering business. But she'd always supported his adventures, had listened to his detailed accounts of routes conquered and challenges overcome. He'd spoken of the mountains with a reverence that bordered on spiritual, describing the mental and physical demands of technical climbing as a form of meditation that connected him to something larger than himself. Miles had been part of that world from the beginning, first as a climbing partner, then as Benjamin's closest friend. They'd complemented each other perfectly, Benjamin's natural athleticism balanced by Miles's technical knowledge, his careful route planning, his encyclopedic knowledge of climbing history and techniques. Together, they'd tackled increasingly challenging objectives, building reputations in the climbing community as skilled but responsible mountaineers.